Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining me for my second monthly audio drama office hour. I'm still kind of figuring out exactly what this thing is. I'm also live on TikTok right now, like on my phone, so trying to figure out exactly how to balance those things. Um, but for those of you who just like happened upon this YouTube and or LinkedIn link, hi, I'm Lauren Shippen. I'm an audio drama creator who's been working in the space for 10 years and a couple years ago made a bunch of free resources that you can find at atypicalartist.co/resources. I can put that up on the screen there to help people make audio drama because it's something that I started completely DIY back in 2015 and then grew a career from. And I want to make it accessible to people who want to do that. And so I try to provide as many free resources and help as I can. And this office hour is an effort in that direction to hopefully make it easier and easier for people to make audio drama. So I am going to be answering questions, and some of those questions I've gotten in advance, but like if you're watching live, please comment with your questions live so that I can prioritize those as I just sort of keep a backlog of questions that people submit for any live streams I do where there aren't a lot of people watching live because I do want to do this every month, last Wednesday of every month. So yes, please, if you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, please add comments asking your questions about audio drama. Okay, somebody's saying that the sound is really low. That might be a StreamYard thing. Let me try and fix that problem. Turn up my mic here. Let me know if that's any better. Okay, people are saying the sound's coming in really low. Let me do what I can here. Unfortunately, I don't have a ton of customization settings with this particular microphone. Oh, hi, Gabrielle. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Max. Hello, everyone. Okay, I just turned up my mic volume, so let me know if that... Okay, Gabrielle's saying it's better. I've cranked it up as far as it can go. So hopefully that will be good. Okay, so let me know if at any point you can't hear or see me. Yeah, I'm gonna turn off the reduce background noise too, because sometimes that cuts out frequencies. Okay, great, way better. Awesome, thank you guys. Thank you for letting me know. As you can see, I'm still figuring out this streaming thing. You'd think that the microphone would be like the one thing that I could get right being a podcaster, but you know, technology is always changing and always, challenging us in new fun ways. Okay, so great. The comments on the YouTube and LinkedIn stream seem to be working great, so leave comments in there. Somebody in the TikTok stream that I'm also doing simultaneously has asked if my new project is in a shared universe with the Bright Sessions. And this is a great segue to actually, announce that I have a new project that I'm currently casting. So if anybody is watching this and is a voice actor, you can go to atypicalartist.co/casting and see the casting breakdown for my new show, 2000 and Late, which is about a woman in her 30s who gets possessed by a demon that was supposed to possess her at 16, but the demon is late. It's kind of my screed against late stage capitalism and a bunch of other things. It is not in a shared universe with the Bright Sessions. It's a totally new thing, totally new characters, totally new premise, totally new world. And it's something that I've been developing for a little while. I'm going to be playing the lead role in it, which I'm really excited about. And someone else asked if there's going to be some familiar voice actors in your new audio project. Me. I obviously play Sam in the Bright Sessions and will be voicing both Harper, the 30-something woman, and Havoc, the demon that possesses her, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And beyond that, I don't yet know if there's going to be any familiar voice actors because I just opened up auditions on Monday and I see that we have a voice actor from LinkedIn tuning into the stream. So yeah, go to atypicalartist.co/casting for that. So that you can submit if you'd like. I'm really excited to, I've gotten a lot of submissions. That's part of why I'm actually live streaming on TikTok as well right now, because I've gotten a lot of attention for the casting call on TikTok specifically. So like that's been an interesting lever to pull for audio drama, which obviously those of you who are watching who are audio drama creators, that was a new lesson for me. The fact that TikTok might be a place in which to put a casting call and get some response. So I'm really excited to listen through all those auditions and work with some new folks. I always love working with the same people over and over again because there's so many talented actors that I've worked with who I could just work with forever. I'm actually talking to a couple of them this afternoon. If you're just like on YouTube and watching live streams, we're doing a live stream at 4 p.m. Pacific with Julia Morizawa, who plays Dr. Bright, Ian McCune, who plays Agent Green, Alex Marshall Brown, who plays Director Wadsworth, and Philip Jordan, who plays Frank from the Bright Sessions. All actors that I would simply adore to work with again and have worked with again in various capacities. They've all been in other shows, but I really like discovering new actors too. And so there's always a point of tension between like, do I hire the same people that I've always hired who I know are excellent and who I love working with, or do I find even more people to add to my stable of actors who are excellent and lovely to work with? So not totally sure what 2008 is going to be yet in terms of the balance of those two things. So thank you for asking. Oh gosh. Okay, if you are commenting in the TikToks, definitely just if I don't see your comment, just keep asking it. This is my first time going live on TikTok. So, okay. Folks, please ask questions in the chat, but I am going to start with some questions that I had in advance, including some questions from last month that I didn't get to last month because we had a very active live chat. Okay, so someone asked last month, do you need a lawyer do you need to get a lawyer if you're going to make an audio drama and hire people? And this is an interesting question because I think that the question really depends on like what part of the audio drama process you are specifically in. If you are the creator, showrunner, executive producer, whatever, like, and you're hiring sound designers and you're hiring composers, actors, etc., yes, it is helpful to have a lawyer to draft those contracts for you. Because even if you're working with like your dearest friends or your loved ones, I still think that it's a great idea to have contracts. Just because even if you're working with your best friend, it's just nice to have like a clear delineation of responsibilities, of ownership, payment, all that kind of stuff. Even if you're doing it for free, it can still be good to say like, okay, you know, if this thing ends up making money, here's what the split is going to be, or here's what your back pay is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. So I think having a contract with your work for hire folks, whether that's a sound designer or an actor or what, is really important. If you are doing a SAG production, although actually I'm not entirely sure about this. So 2008, the show that I'm casting right now, we're currently in the process of doing our SAG paperwork. I'm meeting with SAG on Friday. That alone is very interesting to me. The fact that they were like, we just want to chat and talk to you about this podcast that you've submitted for, because for many, many years, just getting SAG to respond to an email about a podcast was kind of hard. So it's like their process has become much, much more robust. And it used to be in the past that you would have sort of the new media contract to give actors if you had a SAG production, and that would just be the contract that you have for your podcast. And that might still be the case. I'm going to find out on Friday exactly what the new independent podcast agreement entails. But I also have like my own standard voice actor contracts that I give to my actors. So if you do SAG production, your actor contracts kind of might be taken care of. But beyond that, I think if you were to, you know, do some Googling, find some resources, you might find some standard boilerplate contract templates for things like sound design or composition or voice acting or writing. But again, it is helpful to have a lawyer draft all of that stuff for you. Now that's sort of on the side of like, you are a showrunner, you're hiring people, you need to contract them somehow. I do have a lawyer who does draft all of my contracts for that. He's amazing. The thing where he really, really shines though is when I am selling my audio drama to somebody or being hired to write on somebody else's audio drama, right? And that's when, as somebody who's being hired and being paid for a particular idea or a particular service that I'm providing, having a lawyer is huge in terms of having somebody who advocates for you and who pushes for you to be paid fairly and treated fairly and have good deadlines and all of that kind of stuff. That person can also be like an agent or a manager. Lots of different ways to fill that role, but I think having somebody in that role, if you're kind of like playing in the big leagues with larger companies, is crucial. So yeah, that's my answer. I hope that answers your question. I assume that person's not actually watching live right now because that was submitted last month, but if you watch this back, I hope that that is helpful. Definitely get contracts for your work for hires is the takeaway. Okay. Gabrielle has a question for folks who maybe don't know Gabrielle Bina. I don't know how you'd be watching this and not know who he is, but one of the great audio drama writer and creators and directors out there. And his question is, any advice for writing dialogue for audio that reveals information without it sounding clunky / unnatural? The eternal struggle. Oh gosh, classic Gabrielle. You really come out swinging with the with the hard questions. I mean, genuinely, one of the ways that I've learned how to do this is by reading your scripts and listening to your shows. Wolf 359, Dracula, hit singles on Audible. I think all of those shows do a really, really great job of exactly what you're describing. And something that I do with not infrequently is exactly what I did when I listened to hit singles. Not to like put you on blast, Gabrielle, but you did ask a question. I sat down and I re-listened to the first couple of episodes over and over, like the first 2 episodes specifically, and like took notes on like what I thought was particularly effective about establishing the characters, establishing the world, establishing the format of the show in ways that like I wouldn't have thought of, right? And so I do think that listening to a lot of audio drama in the same way that like if you're an author, which I also am, you need to read a lot. Like you need to be reading when you're not actively drafting a book so that you can kind of learn from your fellow authors. I think the same thing applies to audio drama. So I think first step is, just like listen to as many audio dramas as you can and take notes of when exposition feels good and isn't too clunky. And then beyond that, I mean, I think reveals information without it sounding unnatural. I think one of the conversations I'm always having with people who are new to the medium, or if a larger company hires me to work on one of their projects or something, is that you can trust the audience a lot more than you think you can. And they're going to understand a lot more inherently than I think some people assume that they will. And so, for instance, an example I was using recently on a call is like, if a character is hiding, you don't need to have that character say like, oh my gosh, okay, like I need to go hide behind the couch, right? You just need them to whisper, to hear some footsteps, and then to hear them crouching down and whispering more, right? And with the context of the scene, like you'll get that they're hiding somewhere. You don't actually need to know necessarily that they're hiding behind the couch. But if the fact that they're hiding behind the couch is important, let's say a character is walking through the house looking for them, there could be a way to have the character who's looking for them mention something about the couch, or and like depending on your genre and like the circumstance of this scene, that could also be a fun character moment, right? Like you could could be like, God, I hate when people put plastic on their couches, like, or God, what an ugly fucking couch, and then like you hear a little bit of like a little plastic rustle or whatever of the plastic covering the couch. Like I like that's not a great thought out example, but I think trusting your audience, trusting your sound designer to tell you when something's not going to read. Also, like there have been plenty of times when I've given a script to a sound designer and they've been like, I know what you're going for, but this isn't going to read the way that you think it's going to read. So making sure that your sound designer reads all your scripts before you go into production is huge. But I think trusting your audience, using sound design and contextual clues to give the suggestion of what's happening and sort of letting go the idea that the audience needs to know exactly what's happening. And then I think understanding that the order and way in which you give information does not necessarily need to happen in the way that you might initially think, right? So to build off of that kind of clunky example, you could start a scene with a character hiding, right? And with character whispering and sort of some rustling of clothes and them ducking behind something. And the audience will have no idea why they're hiding, who they're hiding from, who they are, but you can reveal that information sort of throughout the scene in various ways, both through what they're doing and what the person who's pursuing them is doing, so that by the time that let's say that this is a cold open of an episode, by the time that the title sequence hits, the audience has some idea of what's going on, but you don't need to necessarily front load all of that information. And I think that that's something that I hear sometimes in audio drama is people being like, like, oh wow, what a lovely room, and I love the coat that you're wearing, and like, it's just trying to like front load all of the visual information that the audience isn't getting, and first of all, like, how much of the information is actually important, and how important is it for the audience to know right now in this moment, or can they know it 30 seconds from now? That's, I think, my broad attempt at that question. But Gabrielle, I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts, because I think that this is something that you do exceptionally well in your shows. Okay, Patrick has a question. How much of the initial 4 seasons of the Bright Sessions did you have outlined when you started recording season 1? And I know this is uniquely individual, so Gabrielle, feel free to comment Wolf. I would love to know that too, actually. For at some point, Gabrielle, I'm just gonna have you on one of these office hour live streams if you are willing, because I always learn so much from you. Gabrielle does some amazing masterclasses. It's directing masterclass. I've got like pages and pages in my notebook, notes that I took during that class. It was excellent. Okay, so how much should I have planned? Great question. Basically none of it, to be totally honest. So when I started the Bright Sessions, actually, it's funny. Yesterday was the 10-year to the day anniversary of when I sent the first message to Julia and Brigham asking them to be part of the Bright Sessions. And what's interesting about that is that was sent, June 24th, 2015. The show came out November 1st, 2015. And we started recording like sometime in like early September, I believe. So, sort of all of this within a 6-month span. And I'd written the first episode. I wrote the first episode in 2014 and then kind of sat on it for a little while and then got back into it in 2015. And when I'd sent Brigham and Julia that message in June, I said, Brigham, I'd love for you to play Caleb, one of the patients. Julia, I'd love for you to play Dr. Bright. I'm going to be playing Sam, the other patient. I think it's going to be 2 patients. I think it's going to be 10 episodes and 5 episodes for each patient. I might add a 3rd. So, 4 months before the show came out, I didn't even know how many characters or how many episodes were going to be in the first season. That I think is like pretty indicative of like the way that I wrote the first 2.5 seasons of the Bright Sessions. Of course, by the time the first season came out, it had 3 patients, so 4 characters total, and each character had sort of 3 sessions. So it was 9 episodes, 3 patients, 3 sessions each. And that happened basically because Anna Laurie, who plays Chloe, is one of my best friends, and I just like really wanted her to be in it, and so I wrote her a role, and that's kind of how that came to be. So that was like the extent of the structure that I had for season 1, was like 3 patients, they each get 3 sessions. Like that's what I know. And the other thing that I know is like Dr. Bright's going to kind of like have an agenda that's bubbling up in the background. There's also going to be this other guy, Damien, who's kind of like lurking around the edges, but like we're not going to hear from. But I had no idea if we were going to do additional seasons. And so by the time that we were like maybe halfway through season 1, we were all having so much fun. And so I decided to just like keep writing. And season 2, I really just wrote like as it was happening, basically. We did 20 episodes in about 4 months. Wait, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't track. Actually, because some of them were mini episodes. It was weekly release. It was very, very intense. And like by the time that we premiered season 2, I think I had maybe like 5 episodes written. And then like by the end of season 2, there were 20 episodes of varying lengths. By the time I got to end of season 2, then I knew where I was going. So it really took like almost 30 episodes before I had an idea of like, okay, now I know what the arc of this show is. And I knew that it was going to be 4 seasons. Of course, the Bright Sessions continued beyond that with season 5, a series of bonus episodes, and then season 6 and 7 are sort of individual spin-offs, like kind of individual story arcs that are contained but involve some of the same characters and involve continuation of some plot lines. But I didn't know, I certainly didn't know that the spin-offs were going to become possible when I sort of had first thought of other stories I could tell in this universe. But I certainly didn't know that I sort of had this 4-season arc in me when I began. It was really in writing season 2 and starting to outline season 3 and approaching it with a little bit more intent and a little bit more structure that I began to realize like, oh, okay, like I think I know what I'm saying with this show. Like, I think I know what I'm the main story that I want to tell. And of course, like there were a million more stories that could be told in the Bright Sessions universe. It is like an endlessly iterative story structure, right? But I think I knew that I didn't want to run it forever because there were so many stories that I loved that ran for too many seasons, and I stopped loving them in the same way because they kind of ate their own tail. But then also, like, I really knew the story that I wanted to tell that ultimately sort of ended up being about Dr. Bright and Sam in many, many ways. Obviously, there was lots more going on in that show, but sort of these two very lonely, very complicated women finding each other and kind of like building something together was really what the overall arc of the show ended up being. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question, Patrick. I didn't have much planned. um, okay, wow, great. There's so many comments. I'm just going to throw some of these up on the screen from Becca. I always think about the Agent Green boxes of files revealed near the end of season 4 in a visual medium that would never have worked, but an audio drama gave the audience scene info when we needed it. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a great example. It's funny. It's so long ago now that like I forget examples from my own writing for these things that we're talking about. Oh, good. I'm glad it was exactly the answer you're hoping for. And Gabrielle says, Patrick, read the outline. Almost nothing when we started season 1. Some loose ideas of where the plot was going, but nothing beyond that. When the first few episodes went live, we hadn't even come up with the idea for Loveless. We really found it as we went along. Oh, that's fascinating. I don't think I knew that. Oh, I'm so glad that I'm not the only one who was just like flying by the seat of her pants. Hysterically almost the same, actually. The break between seasons 2 and 3 is when we really nailed down what the full arc of 139 was. That makes sense to me, actually. Yeah. Well, and not to continue to put Gabrielle on blast, but there's something that he and his wonderful co-creators talk about, which is retroactive cleverness, right? Which is when something ends up in your writing a little bit further down the line that you realize, like, oh, like I foreshadowed this, or like someone points out something in your story that you've been seeding since the beginning. And like the reality is that you weren't necessarily seeing it from the beginning. You sort of grew something from your own writing that then seemed like the plan all along. And I think I definitely had a lot of retroactive cleverness when it came to sort of building the structure of the Bright Sessions and making it make sense. Oh, thank you everybody in the TikTok live for your very, very nice comments. I'm so glad that you guys like the Bright Sessions. That really means a lot. Okay, so let's see. I think that those were the questions so far in the chat. So keep on asking, and I'll move back to my handy dandy spreadsheet of questions that I've received ahead of time. Okay, this is also from Patrick, but I believe a different Patrick. What would you do if you pitched a series to a major podcast company and they said, great idea, but we'd like to read all the episodes. Please come back when they're written. Would you write them and go back, or use that invitation to interest a more established producer who might have a better chance of actually making a deal for the scripts? Thanks. That is a great and really tough question. I'm actually just going to go ahead and like copy this question and post it in the comments so that people can see it. Okay, it looks like I went into it's like 2 comments. So yeah, I mean, gosh, isn't that the dream, to pitch to a major podcast company and have them be interested in the story? I mean, I think like the brutal answer here is that like there just aren't a lot of opportunities to actually be doing that right now. There aren't a lot of companies that are producing original audio fiction on a large scale as there were maybe like 5 years ago. Obviously, Audible is still really pouring money into the space, and for that, I'm incredibly grateful. So yeah, let's say Audible was really interested in the idea, but they wanted to read all the scripts. I mean, yeah, I do have a policy personally that I don't do any script writing for free, other than like the script writing for free that I do for myself, of course, which is like most of the writing that I do on my own originals. It's for free. I definitely wrote the Bright Sessions for free until season 6. But yeah, I mean, I think if a company were to ask you this, I think the appropriate thing to say would be, yes, I'm absolutely interested in writing the scripts. Do you have a development budget to commission a pilot script? And we can go from there. I think I would start there. If they don't want to do that, I think, and you know, especially if you're like new to the space, maybe you're like unproven, like maybe they don't have other things to like look at of yours that have been successful, and this is like a big shot for you, then I think you always have to do the balance of what you're willing to do labor wise for free versus what you think you might get out of it. And it is always a gamble, and it is always a sort of a roll of the dice that you're making. But while I'm always going to be the person who's like, I never, ever, ever ask anybody to do anything on any of my projects unless I can pay them. And I, even if somebody offers, right? Like I get offers sometimes for people wanting to PA or script supervise or script edit or whatever for free. And like, I just don't do that. I want to be able to pay them even a little bit of something if they're doing work for me. But I don't necessarily hold that standard for myself, right? Like I do a lot of free work in the hopes that it will turn into something bigger, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes you do a little bit of free work, and turns out, you know, 4 years later, that person is coming knocking on your door with like an actual real job. So you really have to do that calculus for yourself. I would say if a company is asking you to write an entire season of scripts for free on spec before they greenlight it, that company's probably not going to treat you great, even if they would buy your show. And so I would consider that maybe like a bit of a red flag. Writing a pilot on spec, writing a scene and then some detailed outlines on spec, that I think is a little bit more appropriate. Like I think that to take like a BBC commissioning rounds as an example, for instance, the BBC is, I've only sort of been through their commissioning rounds a couple of times, but they are incredibly specific about what they ask for. And you know exactly every time in each stage of the process what they want. First, it's a 300-word synopsis. Next, it's like that 300-word synopsis turned into 800 words that expound upon the thing. And that, like they've got, you know, like a rubric for every step of the pitching process before they actually give you money and commission something. And oftentimes that rubric involves having, you know, a decently detailed outline of each episode, and then also like a scene or two of script pages to give an example of the tone of the show, give an example of how sound is working, and also, of course, your writing ability, even if you are an established writer. So I think that that's okay. Especially because, you know, in something like the BBC, it's like that money is real. They are going to pick somebody. They are going to commission something in this commissioning round because that's how it works. I think, you know, similarly, depending on how far you are in like an Audible commissioning round or pitching round, like chances are they're going to pick something. And so doing a little bit of work on spec like that, I think is fine. Let's see, with the second half of the question being, would it be better to bring it to a more established producer, or might have a better chance of actually making a deal for the scripts? Well, I guess I've answered your question by sort of saying like writing them isn't necessarily even the first step, right? Like I think that writing a pilot script might be good, but you don't necessarily have to write the entire season. I think if you've written an entire season, I think that's the point at which it might make sense to pursue self-funding and crowdfunding, because you've done one of the hardest pieces of it. And if you ever have the sort of option of making something indie and owning all of it versus selling it to somebody for like the hopes of a budget and eventually getting it out, if you can afford to do it on your own, if it's a small enough idea, maybe just make the thing if you've written all the scripts already. In terms of bringing it to a more established producer, yeah, I mean, I think that I certainly think that can work. In my experience, and I say this as somebody who has been the established producer who's brought in on these things, if a company like Audible is really interested in an idea from an unproven entity, and they don't necessarily have scripts yet, but they're interested in kind of like seeing scripts or commissioning scripts or giving a little bit of development money or whatever, like they're going to tell you that you needed a more experienced producer, because like I've been brought in on a lot of those things with folks who are new to the audio sphere, and I've kind of functioned as that experienced producer. So I would ask the company if they have a development budget. I would ask if they would be open to reading some sample scenes and some detailed outlines, and then go from there. That would be probably my inclination. Um, but yeah, Max, really feel like the wheels have been coming off everything these past few years. Sure does, yeah. Seems like I'm about where you were 10 years ago, working on my first audio drama concept. As someone who's only done solo creative work before, the process of finding collaborators scares me a bit. Um, I don't know if this is a question or just talking about the stage that you're at, but yeah, I finding collaborators is really scary, and something that I was certainly quite scared to do. Like that message I was mentioning that I sent to Brigham and Julia about just even acting in the Bright sessions. Like I was very nervous about sending that because I was asking them to do something for free and to do something that had like no guarantee of working at all. And we got really, really lucky that it worked. And eventually I was able to pay them and back pay them for the work that they had done for free and all of that kind of stuff. But I found it quite scary, especially because I didn't think that like what I had to offer as a writer or a director or showrunner or anything was like I felt, and I still feel this way, that they were doing me a great favor by like humoring me in acting in my silly little project. It ended up working out, I think, really well for all of us. I think it led each of us to sort of pursue a niche in the entertainment sphere that like we wouldn't have pursued otherwise. So I like to think that like some of their favor was returned. Um, but I think despite sort of whatever anxiety or imposter syndrome that I've experienced and continue to experience, I think it's always important to remember that like artists want the opportunity to work on cool stuff with cool people. And they want like this was I think the real revelation for me around working with a ton of different actors sort of through the years with fiction podcasting, right? Like when we made In Strange Woods, which is a musical podcast that I didn't create, but that I executive produced through Atypical Artists, we got like Patrick Page and Donald Champlin and like people like from Broadway to be in this original musical that could not pay them very well. And part of that was the fact that like it was 2020, and so Broadway actors in particular were really out of work. But like their enthusiasm and willingness to do something like that for not a huge amount of money, I think like really has been reflected in sort of like every actor I've worked with, regardless of sort of like their stature or level of fame or experience, which is like the great thing about audio is that you can show up, you don't have to memorize your lines, you don't have to like sit in hair and makeup forever. There's this saying in Hollywood that I always felt was very true when I first heard it, which is that actors don't get paid to act, they get paid to wait, and they do the acting for free. Because that is very much the experience of being on a film and television set, which is part of why I'm really happy I discovered audio drama, because I didn't love that aspect of being on a film set. Just the fact that like you're there for 10 hours and you're acting for maybe an hour and a half of all of that. So I think like the opportunity that you're providing to actors specifically to just like show up and just act and just have fun acting, I think is so, so valuable. Obviously, you should pay your actors. But in terms of like having some imposter syndrome or being nervous about finding creative collaborators, like I think that you are giving them a gift by giving them an opportunity to explore a part of their creativity. When it comes to other types of creatives, collaborators, fellow writers, directors, sound designers, composers, I would say like the best thing that you can do in audio drama, in my view, is network peer to peer, and with people who are further along than you are, but like you know meeting Gabrielle back in, God, I mean, Gabrielle, how long have we known each other? Like 9 years. Like I think we met in 2016, 2015. Like, we've worked together on stuff. We've recommended each other for jobs. We've poached each other's actors. We've, shared a lot of creative collaboration in lots of different forms. And that's the same with Misha Stanton, the sound designer for the Bright Sessions. And Misha actually reached out to me because they heard an announcement in the Bright Sessions feed between seasons 1 and 2 that I was hoping to get money through Patreon to hire a sound designer. And they were living in LA and I was living in LA, and they reached out and we got coffee and then we were working together. And it was just because like we were both interested in the other person's podcast and we both were starting out, and we met and had coffee and we had a great time chatting with each other, and like the vibe was just good. And then it was just a natural thing to be like, yeah, like let's work together. And now of course we've worked together on a million different things in a million different ways, and they've worked with a lot of the people that I've worked with and vice versa. And so I think just like focusing on building your community, and even if it's just starting as like, this person lives in my city or runs a show that I really, really love, I'm just gonna like grab coffee with them or hop on a Zoom with them and get to know them. That could turn into a creative collaboration down the line. So I think just, yeah, look at who else is out there right now kind of doing the same thing that you're doing, and listen to their stuff and get to know them. That would be my recommendation. I don't know. I still don't know if that was a question as much as it was just, you pondering, but I talked for a while about it, so I hope it was helpful. Okay, let's see. Okay. From Jakey Tyne. When did you decide to write the Bright Sessions books? Was there a reason they were not additional podcast episodes? P.S. Saw them at a queer bookstore in Salt Lake City the other day. Oh, yay. That makes me so happy. So yeah, I wrote 3 YA books in the world of my first podcast, The Bright Sessions, which is still a crazy thing that I can't believe I got to do. So it's funny. The first book, Infinite Noise, which is about Caleb and Adam and kind of their romance, is actually something that I'd started writing before the idea of actually publishing a book was like a twinkle in my eye, because, and sort of to Patrick's earlier question about how much should I have planned, I didn't think that Adam was going to be a voiced character in the podcast. So as I was writing season 1, I was thinking about like, oh, well, we're never really going to hear from this guy. We're only ever going to hear about him from Caleb. And so I want to kind of get a better idea of like who he is, and, how he is experiencing this kind of like bizarre friendship with this guy who like seems to just like always know how he's feeling, right? So I basically like I approached it as like, I'm gonna write like fanfic for my own thing. Like I'm gonna write some Adam POV chapters of what he's experiencing that Caleb's describing in therapy. And then I ended up sharing that with Brigham. I ended up sharing it with Alex when we eventually did bring Adam in as a cast member. But that was just sort of like languishing on my computer. And probably of like the 3 chapters I wrote, I think probably like 60% of that ended up finding its way into the Infinite Noise in some form or another. So in many ways it like was in the back of my mind. And I think that sort of initial jumping off point, I think is really a good example of like why I explored it in books versus in the podcast. Because at least when I was sort of first doing Caleb and Adam getting together, the show was entirely in the therapy room, right? We hadn't strayed outside of it yet. I didn't necessarily have plans to stray outside of it, because they sort of have their burgeoning friendship and sort of fall in love in the course of like 15 episodes. Like it actually happens quite quickly. Whereas in the book, it's like it's like they don't have their first kiss until probably like 3/4 of the way through the book. And just getting to spend time with that, getting to like really like tease out that relationship. Like I love a good falling in love story. And also getting to see it from Adam's perspective was something that just like with the way that the podcast was structured was not going to be possible to do in the podcast. And then for books 2 and 3, it was kind of the same thing. It was, I wanted to think about what Damien had been up to before he sort of ended up where we meet him. And the show, I guess there could have been a way to have like Sam like time travel back and sort of like witness Damien's past, but I think that would have been like pretty convoluted. And also I was like very interested in exploring Damien's specific POV. And so doing a prequel novel, jumping back 10 years in time before the podcast begins, again, it's something that like wasn't really going to be able to do in podcast form. The third book, Some Faraway Place, about Rose, is obviously the one that tracks over the timeline the most. And of course, we do go into a dream at one point, right? The musical episode of The Bright Sessions, episode 410, season 4, episode 10, does take place in a dream as a result of Rose's dream driving ability. But that wasn't something that was going to become like a major part of the show. And so it just made sense to kind of like explore that in a little bit more detail in a book, especially since like Rose is very much a supporting character in the podcast, and I kind of wanted to sit with her a little bit more directly in the book without pulling attention away from sort of the story that I was primarily telling in the Bright sessions. Yeah, so that's kind of how it came to be. I mean, really, it came to be because Matthew L. Blanc, my agent, reached out to me and was like, "Have you ever thought about writing a Bright Sessions book?" And I was like, "It's funny you should say that. I actually have these pages of like a YA novel. If you'd like be interested in reading them and talking about it." And then we hopped on the phone and talked for like 90 minutes, and like we just got along like a house on fire. And he sold the trilogy because he's amazing. So that's sort of how the practical part of it happened. Oh, great, Max. I'm so glad that was helpful and so true. There doesn't really have to, and with all of this, it's like these answers are, your mileage may vary. Do with it what you will. Okay. Dave, as an indie audio drama creator, what's your good writing life / marketing life balance? Creating audio dramas versus letting the world know that you are can be a tough act to balance sometimes. Oh, yes, it can. This is, I think, one of my favorite questions to sort of dig into, and also one of my least favorite, because it is so important and it's so hard. And also I just like straight up do not have an answer for this at all. Because I am still constantly trying to figure out what the balance of this is. I mean, I think there's a certain amount of like letting go that is important to keep in mind when marketing your podcast, in the sense that like, if in the process ever of like pitching your show or marketing your show or talking to somebody who could potentially market your show, anybody ever says to you like, this is exactly the way that we know to market fiction podcasts and to grow a podcast and to get listeners, it works every time, hire us and we'll do it, that person is lying to you. There is not a person on this planet who has a guaranteed way to get people to listen to a fiction podcast. If there is somebody out there, like, please, for the love of God, email me. I will pay you obscene amounts of money if you actually can prove it. But no, there's no silver bullet, and like the ground is constantly shifting underneath our feet when it comes to marketing. So like something I like to think about is leading from the creative. I think well, there's a couple different things I want to say. Figure out the marketing levers that you are willing to pull and how much you are willing to pull them, how often you are willing to pull them. So like, for instance, to give you like a little bit of insight into like the way that I market things, which like I barely do because I don't have a lot of time to market my own podcasts. I'm quite active on Tumblr. I have a Blue Sky. I technically am on TikTok. That's like, I truly just like throw chum in the water on TikTok, and like if I get one person to listen to a podcast, then I've succeeded. But like I don't understand TikTok. So like it's really just like Tumblr, Blue Sky, and then like the newsletter that I send out to people who subscribe, which if they're subscribed to my newsletter, like or Atypical's newsletter, they are already going to know about my show, right? So it's really just two platforms. And for Blue Sky, once every 2 weeks, I use Buffer, which is you can queue up to 10 posts on Blue Sky for free with Buffer. And I do that every 2 weeks. I queue 10 posts, so one for each weekday on Atypical's Blue Sky, and then I just like retweet those to my own Blue Sky, and it's like that's like the bare minimum. But just sort of like, okay, like if I can sort of put one post out there and it reminds one person to listen to a podcast that we put out 2 years ago, then awesome, right? And so I think like that's a good example of like, okay, here's like a consistent thing that I can do that's like probably not moving the needle at all very much, but it's just sort of like keeping the awareness campaign of Atypical going, right? Because the whole thing of like somebody has to see something 7 times before it sinks in, like that whole marketing adage, I don't know how true that is. You finding the things that you can just sort of like set and forget and have like a recurring task in your calendar to set and forget, I think can be helpful and can help kind of minimize that time that you're burning on marketing. And then beyond that, I think letting the creative drive the marketing, right? So like being enthusiastic about your own work, being enthusiastic about your listeners, sharing your passion with them and celebrating their passion, right? Like my personal Tumblr is like mostly me reblogging fan art that people have made because I love fan art and it is still the coolest thing in the world to me that people have made fan art of the shows that I've made. I mean, that's like half the stuff that I have on my wall. It's like that's fan art and that's fan art, and like because I just like it makes me so happy, and so like I can very enthusiastically reblog that stuff, re-skeet that stuff, whatever it is, and get really stoked about it, and then like the fans get excited, they reblog their own stuff again, and you know, you sort of get your characters and your story exposed to other people who are inclined to be passionate about stories, because that's what Tumblr's about. Similarly, like if I am in the midst of writing and like I've written like a, you know, a line I think people might like, or like an interaction or a character description I think people might like if I'm allowed to, like if I'm not writing something that's like totally confidential because somebody else has hired me to write it, like I'll screenshot that and put it on Blue Sky or Tumblr or something. So I think like letting the creative inspiration moments lead the sort of marketing tone that you are taking online, and and just really focusing on building that community rather than promoting, I think is like the best way forward. But I think like everybody has their own writing routine, right? Like some people are like I need to get up every morning and write 500 words before I start work, and that's how I write. I'm not a write every day person. I'm like okay, like I need to finish this script today, come hell or high water, and it just needs to exist so that I can edit it and make it good. And then I don't write for 2 weeks. And then, you know, everybody has their own writing routine. And I think it's just like coming up with a similar marketing routine that you can stick to, like any habit that you can, you know, keep up and build upon. And then just making sure that the passion that you have for your writing is coming out in the passion that you have for marketing your show as well. And sort of talking about it as something that you love making, because if you're making it, you love making it, right? Because it's like, none of us are doing this to become millionaires. So I think just like being very upfront about that kind of stuff. Oh, and apparently I've answered Patrick's question before I even saw it. Fantastic. Oh, about how I write. Oh, actually, okay, great. I actually do have more to say about this, Patrick, if that's all right. But let me just catch up more on here. Oh, great. I'm so glad that folks are. Yeah, Max. There's one trick to writing the perfect novel. Unfortunately, no one knows what it is. Very, very true. And yeah, absolutely. Like it really can feel, Dave, like one is interrupting the other. And so I think like trying to link them as much as you possibly can. Something that I've been doing, I have a show called Phantom Pulse that I've been developing for 2.5 years, which is kind of crazy. But it's about a band in the 90s, Phantom Pulse, that can exorcise ghosts with their music. And so it's like about their first tour. They're touring the Midwest, and they are going to these haunted places and getting rid of the ghosts through their rock music. It's kind of like a horror, grunge rock musical found family queer love story. There's a lot going on in it, but I'm like fully obsessed with this idea. Like I've been like, my brain has been consumed by this idea for the last 2 years. So much so that I've made like little like collages of like the characters, and I've made mixtapes for them, and I've made really detailed show Bible and stuff. And like this show does not exist yet, right? I have a pilot for it, and I've got like 4 scripts for it, but I'm hoping to crowdfund it for it in the fall. But like already, like I'm posting stuff about it on my Tumblr, because it's like I'm really excited about this show, and I want to get people excited about it, because like I want to talk about it. I want to be a fan of my own thing and get other people to be a fan. Oh my gosh. Emily in the TikTok chat is on FaceTime with Charlie right now. Hi, Charlie. Oh my God. Hi, Brigham. Oh, I love the Bright Citizens people. They're the best. And just a reminder that in 40 minutes, I'm going to be doing a live stream with some of them right here on Atypical's channel. So be sure to tune into that. Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Dave. The Fan of Paul song that I released was awesome. Yeah, if you can go to I think it's just atypicalartist.co/fanimpulse, or like the link is on the first page. You can hear the song and exorcism in the pilot episode. And if you are an Atypical supporter, you can actually hear the entire pilot episode. I'm so stoked about it. I really hope I get to make it. We'll see if we're able to successfully crowdfund for it, because of the music element, it is expensive. Okay. Quickly backtracking to Patrick's question, I know we talked about this a little bit. It really depends on what I need to accomplish. So I'll kind of leave book writing to the side, because like that process is very different. And obviously this is audio drama office hour. So unless somebody specifically wants to know about book writing, I'll leave that to the side. But I think for me, like, especially when it comes to stuff that is only going to be made under my own fire, right? Like stuff that I'm being hired for. It's very easy to be like, okay, I have a deadline. I have to meet that deadline. Like I just need to make the time for it. And also I'm being paid for it. So it's like easy to make the time for it because that's my job. But for the stuff that I'm making, like Breaker Whiskey or New Year's Day, like stuff that I'm making purely for the love of the game, it really is just about building a routine. So like for Breaker Whiskey, which was the daily podcast I did every weekday for a year, obviously that had to really, really have an established routine. And so my goal was always I need to write 2,000 words a week. However that happens, I need to write 2,000 words a week. And that's exactly what I did for 52 weeks. And then sometimes I would get ahead. Sometimes inspiration would strike and I would get, rolling. And then there would be weeks where it's like, oh boy, like it's going to take me 2 weeks to write these 2,000 words. I'm going to fall a week behind and I just have to then catch up elsewhere. So I think building a routine, and then also what I like to call finding your own cheat code. So for me, if you have talked to me for more than 2 minutes at any point in my life, you know how much I love making playlists. I literally have a color-coded spreadsheet for my playlists because that's how much I love playlists. And one of the first things that I do in building out an idea, even before I'm scripting, pretty much as I'm like, I've got I do the log line and like, then I do the playlist is I build out a playlist that like encapsulates the show for me or the idea for me. And then I listen to that every single time I am working on the show in any capacity, whether it's doing pitching, whether it's looking at, art, whatever it is. Like I've got that playlist on when I'm working on it and oftentimes when I'm not, when I'm just like going on my little like inspiration walks and walking around in my neighborhood and trying to think of ideas. And then when I'm really struggling to write, it's like, okay, put that on, lock in. That's the cheat code. That's going to get me into the headspace for this particular idea. It might not be music for you. It might be a particular candle that you light. It might be a particular place in your house that you write or a particular cafe. It might be a particular notebook that you write in. Do you prefer writing longhand? Do you prefer typing things up? For New Year's Day, my yearly podcast that has monthly missives that take the form of either journal or letters or telegrams. Now that we're in the 20th century, excuse me. The show starts in the 1890s. The thing that I've discovered for that, because I try to write at least 500 words each month, which isn't very much, but like, I've got to keep up with it. And I always start longhand. I always do it longhand first in my notebook and then transcribe it to my computer and work on it there. So like whatever it's going to be for whatever project, like finding the cheat code that gets you into that headspace, I think is incredibly useful. Okay. Full casting mostly written, but since I have neither the resources nor the connections to produce it, I currently plan to start with something more narrative in the same setting. That's a great idea. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of finding the thing that you can make yourself, and that being a point of inspiration. Okay. Kira, since Phantom Pulse is touring the Midwest, can they stop in Wisconsin as a treat for me? Half joking, but also that would be fun. They actually aren't going to Wisconsin, I don't think. I bought an atlas for Breaker Whiskey that I was using to kind of map out her. I ended up using a website called Scenic Drives that has like her whole route, but I found an atlas very, very helpful for like finding sort of inspiration. Like, okay, where is she going to go next? And I did map out Phantom Pulse's tour on the atlas, and it does not go to Wisconsin, but maybe season two. Okay. I think this is going to be my last question because I've got 5 minutes until we're at the hour, and I want to make sure I set up for the Bright Sessions live stream. Also, my phone is about to die, so I might just completely leave TikTok without meaning to. Okay, but one final question from Jay Cottle. With audio, show don't tell is already nuanced, but how have you navigated writing where the story leads with the sometimes beautiful tension of only having dialogue, music, and SFX at your disposal? So we talked about this a little bit at the beginning with Gabrielle's great question around how to write exposition without it feeling clunky and with making sure that it stays natural. And yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting way to put this question. With writing where the story leads with the tension of only having dialogue, music, and SFX at your disposal. I think for me personally, I think there's a million different ways to get at this same concept, right? The same puzzle to be solved. For me, it's really drilling down into what each character sounds and feels like. So when I was first starting the Bright sessions, I sort of had like a little like a language map for each character. So for Dr. Bright, it's that she speaks very clearly, very calmly, and just with a great degree of control, right? And for Caleb, is that he used few words when he could, and he relied on swearing a lot when he didn't necessarily know how to express what he was feeling. For Chloe, for Chloe, it's really she's having 7 conversations in her head at all times because she can hear the thoughts of other people. But it was sort of always finding the route to hope in each of her lines, right? How does her thought process work where it's like she's always trying to find the beauty in everything, and how does that manifest in her language? And for Sam, because she has anxiety, it was very much like a lot of ellipses, a lot of sort of aborted sentences, right? Like she sort of starts to say something and then she stops and starts over. So I think just even like those little quirks, right? Like, and obviously all those things changed immensely once actors actually got into those roles. But I think sort of thinking about the language of each character individually and how they talk. A great way to sort of like figure out how to approach this is just like listening to all the people in your life and hearing like, okay, what do they use as filler words? What do they use when they're saying like, and so on and so forth, right? Is it like blah, 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 or da, 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 or like, everybody has has their own idiolect, right? Like their own way of speaking that can manifest in a ton of different ways. So I think that's something that helps me kind of create story in just the dialogue alone, right? Is making sure that each character has a really distinct voice. And then I think the thing that's sort of most underutilized in, I think, sort of first swings at audio drama, and something that took me a long time to learn, is the power of silence, right? Like, yes, you have dialogue, you have music, and you have sound effects, but you also have silence. And silence is crucial. It's incredibly effective. I really like, anybody who's ever worked with me or listened to my stuff knows that I really like to have, a lot of overlapping lines. I like characters talking quickly. I like them interrupting each other. I like a lot of overlap. That is the way that I write. That is the way that I speak very quickly. And so for me, finding those little pockets of silence where everything just like stops was really, and continues to be like very, very effective in making sure that, I am thinking of those spaces in the script and writing those beats in, I think is incredibly important because it helps me find the rhythm of the scene and of the story. And I think it's also something that in a kind of contradictory way can actually really grab a listener's ear, right? Like something that you need to pay attention to in audio drama is that like everyone is always doing something else. I mean, that's generalization, right? Obviously, like a lot of people like do just sit down and listen to audio drama, or like they lie down and close their eyes and listen to audio drama. I certainly do that. But like I also listen to audio drama when I'm in my car, and I listen to audio drama when I'm doing the dishes, and I listen to audio drama when I'm playing a video game, May I highly recommend listening to either In Strange Woods or Red Valley while playing The Long Dark, which is a survival game in the woods, and it's just like perfect pairing. That's how I listen to all of Red Valley. And their mind is going to be wandering. I mean, actually, one of the reasons that I do try to do something else while listening to audio drama is that my mind is less inclined to wander. But I think that just podcasts in general, it's important to like repeat certain bits of information that you need the audience to know, and then also create moments of like snapping the audience back into attention, whether that's like a music cue or a loud sound effect or a new character entering the scene, a new voice, but also silence. It's like if someone's listening to something and it starts to kind of fade into the background, and then the people who are talking go silent, they're going to be like, wait a second, what just happened? It's like, feels like something big happened. So I don't know that really answers your question, but I think considering silence as part of your toolkit, and then really making sure that each of the characters feels very distinct, even before you get actors with distinct voices in the mix, will really help you kind of create a story that is very, very dynamic. And then I also think understanding that pacing and stakes and sort of all of the traditional story things that you might find, differences in TV versus film versus theater. I think understanding that that is also very different in audio depending on what you're doing, and that you can take a little bit more time with things and you can be a little bit slower with certain things. And that's a great gift unto itself, I think is an important thing to remember. And yes, Red Valley is very good. If you've not listened to it, I highly recommend it. Okay, I am going to put a link to the Bright Sessions live stream in the comments of this video, because that will be starting in just a half an hour. Oops, that doesn't work. Okay. Oh, my TikTok is freaking out now. Let me just, and if you would like to hear more about making the Bright Sessions, hear more from our amazing actors, I highly recommend coming to that. I think it'll be really, really fun. And you can also go to atypicalartist.co/resources for resources about how to make audio drama. Thank you, as always, everyone, for joining me. This has been a blast. And I hope to see you next month, last Wednesday of every month. I've decided to actually make the time variable instead of 3 p.m., sort of as I had initially planned. So just keep an eye out on our socials and atypicalartist.co/create for, which I actually don't have a banner for the time, and also just like the YouTube channel and LinkedIn events to know when it's going to be on the last Wednesday of each month. And you can submit questions whenever throughout the month as you think of them. So thank you so much for your amazing questions this stream. Thank you for joining, and I hope to see some of you at the Bright Sessions live stream in just 30 short minutes.